Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this session this afternoon. I won't talk too much about us, although I'm not I am an authentic transformational leader, but my real title, my job title is Innovation and Continuous Improvement Manager. Work on, both Rhys and I, Rhys will be joining me, work on the Western Program Alliance, doing level crossing removals with the level crossing removal project here in Victoria. So I'm just going to take us through the problem that we faced, some background, give you some context, and the adventure that we've been on, the outcomes that we've come to, and sort of where we're heading next with Connected Site. What's the problem in this photo? Can't see. Which direction is the plane heading in? It's drifting left. Maybe it is. And sometimes I think this is an issue that we have, and we've had for years in our in industry. We don't actually know where we're heading. We don't know if we're about to crash into a mountain. We do get updates on the odd occasion. And so I think the other thing that's happening in the background is we're pretty slow on the uptake in construction. This puts us ahead of agriculture and hunting in terms of technology, embracing technology. This is McKinsey Group chart that many of you will be familiar with. How many people here are from the construction industry? Most of you, yep. And we've also got bucket loads of work coming up, especially in Melbourne. We've got more work here in Melbourne than what we've ever had, and we're facing a whole lot more work. So we are quite quite constrained with resources. So we are working with the level crossing removal project. We engaged with them to do a trial on one of our sites, which was a level crossing removal package at Aviation Road, which is in Laverton in Melbourne's west, to trial a different way of doing things in what we call connected sites. And we looked at it, we engaged a technology partner through quite an extensive process, and Orange has joined the team. And I think the most important part here is that collaboration. Like, I actually just heard a really interesting discussion from Matt next door about IoT in construction. It is really important having the connection between construction, government, and technology has been a key part of this. So we're looking at something that we can use continuously. There are technology solutions out in construction, and quite often they're quite expensive. Telematics, that sort of stuff, and a lot of proprietary systems that equipment makers and so forth use. But we're looking at something that's very cheap and we can use and scale. And I think, the other thing that we're trying to do is try and get like a real paradigm shift in people's thinking around data in construction, how we can use data to make objective data-based, data-driven decisions. So very focused on the problem and the user rather than technology. The technology helps us solve the problem. So a big part at the start too was engaging with construction, our construction team and the people, and asking them what were the questions they were seeking to solve. They were seeking sort of the answers to. So I'm going to make a little diversion, which will make a whole lot more sense when Rhys gets up here. I've spent about 20 years in construction. First 10 years in construction management from site engineer. And one of my jobs as a young engineer was managing retaining walls on a large motorway project. Retained earth walls. For those that aren't familiar with retained earth walls, there's these precast panels that have straps attached to them, which when you put the fill on, and the friction from the fill and the weight of the fill stops the wall falling over. So we build a lot of these things. And when I was a young engineer, I used to manage the construction of those, and had a lot of spent a lot of time stressing about retaining walls. There's the fill going in, metal strips, and just some photos. So the key thing to note here is that there's a real dependency between the precast panels and the straps and the fill. You sort of have to run a course of panels. This will all make a lot more sense while I'm explaining this in a little bit. But you have to run the panels, then the fill and the straps, and work your way up. You can't install panels without some straps and fill, and you can't install straps and fills without panels coming in. It's quite a sequential flow. This is a 4D animation of the walls that we built at Aviation Road, the trial site. That's sort of demonstrates how they go together. It doesn't show the straps. That's one of the walls. And I'm handing over.
Hey everyone, Rhys Craige, the Western Program Alliance Systems Lead. So I've been working hard on this project for probably about 18 months, and it's been exciting, been challenging. So to talk a little bit more about it, based on what Phil's just introduced you to, the Western Program was approached by LXRP, or Level Crossing Removal Project, to be the trial site for connected sites. So us being the guinea pigs for everything, we're always keen to try something new, so we were very keen to do that. We selected Aviation Road as that pilot site. So going back to the user-led questions that Phil broached about, we turned them into areas of focus or areas of work. Safety environment, asset management, site logistics, that sort of thing. We then were able to turn them into those focus areas into a solution architect based on the sources of the data. So we had a few GPS sensors, a few API-driven things from Google Traffic, as well as the Bureau of Meteorology. We had a weather station, among other things. But all of that, I should stress that all of this architecture was based on those questions. So we got those questions and then applied the technology to try and answer them, not the reverse. So what does that look like, and why did we collate all of that information into the one spot? Basically to produce something like this. These are all the initial dashboards that we put together at Aviation Road. So this is actually in the planning area, out on site. This is where they would do their daily stand-ups, as well as usually their weekly construction meetings to discuss what they're doing for the next few days, as well as the next few weeks. So these visuals were put together to allow our people to actually make informed decisions and proactive decisions. So once we got all this technology up and working, we were able to prove that the concept actually worked, rapidly deployable, that sort of thing. We decided to switch focus. We had about 6 weeks left of the pilot, and then we also had about 6 weeks left of RE wall construction. So we decided to concentrate on that activity. So going back to the whole premise of connected sites being user-led, we started with those questions. What did our people need to see in order to make informed decisions? What was the burning platform? So those questions were like, how much fill have I placed for the day compared to what was planned? How many panels have I installed today compared to planned? And then how long did it take for me to install those panels? So that all goes towards your critical path activity. And if you can influence your critical path, I don't need to tell you the savings involved with that. And additionally to that, LXRP have some pretty key KPIs as part of most activities that we're trying to measure, or part of our continuous improvement as part of the program. So some of these questions can include, some of these KPIs can include the number of units we've installed per day as well as per week, the amount of plant that we've used and the hours associated to actually install that, the labour that we've used to install that, and all that goes towards cost. So moving on to the fill in specifically, what did we do? So keeping in mind we had about 6 weeks to do this, so it was all done very quickly, reasonably rough, but it worked. So we developed an app. We developed an app that was able to be used on any browser-enabled device, mobile device or your computer, or either or. We then handed out an iPad to each of the gatekeepers out on sites, and there was numerous of them. That app allowed them to put in the license plate number of the trucks coming through the gate, as well as the material that was being brought through, the unit of measure, and how much was being brought through. Additionally to that, the construction team had access to the platform as well to actually input their daily targets. So instantly, we could measure plan versus actual. So we presented that in a visual similar to that one there. This was all done real time as well. So as the guy at the gate was putting in the numbers, it was coming up on the screen. So instantly, people were able to make reactive or proactive decisions, being the operative thing, rather than reactive ones. Because typically, this information wasn't really well known until about a day or two, potentially even weeks later, when someone was actually inputting all the dockets into an Excel spreadsheet, God forbid. So was it successful? Basically it was. It was a great success. We had many additional benefits as well. We removed some administrative effort, being that the information was already being input at the gate, so therefore some administrator didn't actually have to input from the dockets straight into an Excel. It also gave a great indication of productivity. So obviously the amount of dirt that's coming through, if it's been placed directly, it goes towards your productivity. It also, stressing the point, it allowed the users or the guys out on site to make proactive decisions, giving them the presentation of data to allow them to make those decisions. Moving on to the more exciting one, the panel tracking. The theory was pretty simple. We had a few GPS devices. We were going to put one on the crane, or two on the crane, one on the boom, one on the body. And then we also had the GPS locations of the wall, each panel individually, because we built them in CAD first, so we had each of those. Simply, if we would overlay the two, if the crane was sitting over the top of the wall for more than a couple of seconds, you could assume that that's a panel install. So you've got instantly what panel, well, not what panel, but you've got a panel has been installed, as well as how long it's taken you to install them. So what we did exactly that. We put two GPS sensors that we already had out on site. They were just magnetised units, so we just lifted and shifted. We put them on the crane. We extracted all the GPS locations of each of the panels and imported them directly into the platform. And then we got about several weeks' worth of data. So did it work? Before I answer that, I think I should stress that a point of a pilot is to actually fail. So as long as you learn from those mistakes. So the simple answer is we didn't work. We failed probably miserably, looking back. But some of the key problems that we had was the GPS scatter that we had on the crane. The scatter was probably about as wide as the MCG. So when you're talking about a panel that's 2 metres wide, you've got Buckley's chance of actually measuring that. So we tightened that up, made the scatter quite tight, as well as we sent data packets, increased the interval from 1 minute data packets to 15 seconds, hoping that would give us a little bit more accuracy, which it did. So we found, as part of that, we found another activity that was confusing things greatly. We were lifting, as well as installing panels, we were also shifting metal straps from one side of the wall into the other. When you're looking at purely just the data from an analyst's point of view, the two activities look the same. So when we thought that anything is able to be identified between a discernible pattern, so in order to do that, you need consistent data. That brings me to my favourite problem. We actually had a guy out on site watching these cranes, observing them, actually tagging when a panel was being lifted, when it was being placed, when the crane was moving away. All went really well. The only problem was, by the end of the day, we actually figured out that the crane that we were using was being wet hired, and it was actually down in Geelong. So it was a problem that we came across more than a few times. Having said all of that, we learnt a great deal as part of this, and it is going into some interesting places moving forward. It's proven itself to be of great value. And just to talk to some of those really exciting stuff coming up, I'll pass it back over to Phil.
Thank you. I just wanted to, sorry, Rhys, can you unlock this? Just want to recap. So from my time working on retained earth walls as a young engineer, thank you. I just wanted to cover off a couple of the points that this technology is helping us to reduce on site. Like, you get general delays all the time, right? So your material's held up on the road, there's road jams, and so forth. You get that stuff happening. So this helps them, the dashboards that Rhys showed helps visibility of what's going on there, so people can respond much faster, and that might be the supervisor, it could be even the supplier, being able to see that information. We haven't engaged the suppliers yet, but we will be doing that shortly. Access and missing panels is a problem. So I remember going to one of my retaining walls, going out to the site to the supervisor, who was called the Phantom, by the way, which tells you a lot, and him saying we're missing a panel, like a pretty critical panel, and I was saying, no, well, you're not missing it, it's here. It says on my docket here that it's arrived. He's like, yeah, but it's not here. So, and what that means is, in a process like this is a big delay, because that is a critical piece. You can't just skip a panel and move on, because it's very difficult to build a wall with a gap and then try and get it slotted back in. So that's a significant disruption. And I just thought I was pretty unlucky, but we had the same thing occur at our aviation road site. Again, the same issue. So much better visibility for all the people on site, all the people involved, makes a big difference. It's something I wish I had those years ago. So there's a few things we're looking at now on our next site, which is in Werribee, the Cherry Street site. We're looking at, can we use geofences to automatically cost code the resources out on site? What can we do with machine learning? That's pretty open. We've developed a platform to track the meetings that we're having, the site meetings, the pre-starts and toolboxes and attendances at that. We're also exploring paperless options, and probably most excitingly is expanding on this precast panel tracking. And it's very interesting listening to Matt's conversation next door, because we are doing something similar to what he did with facade panels coming out of China. We're really trying to get visibility of the supply chain. So similar to, for those that were over there, they were trying to track facade panels out of China. We're not going to China. We're locally supplied panels, but knowing when they're cast and when they're transported, we're stockpiling them at a storage area near our yard. So we want to know what's in the storage yard, where it is, so people don't have to go searching. We'll be using QR codes, I'm pretty sure we've decided that, to track them, and just basically we'll be zapping them each time they go from point A to point B. And so with the system, if it's like 8 days from when you cast a panel, it's sort of minimum 8 days, because the panel has to cure for 7 days, so it's concrete's hard enough, before you can then transport it and install it. So if something's not cast 8 days ahead of when we're planned to go in, then we know we have a problem straight away. We're not finding out 8 days later and having an 8-day delay. So that's really cool, and it's one less thing the engineers actually have to think about, because it's just going to be done for us. And and we're also thinking about the visuals, and we've done a lot of work with the people out on site who have to deliver this, saying what is it that you want to see. So we're really designing user interfaces for each of the people, and also the people off site in the production. So our problem before is we've now got some visibility. And this is what visibility looks like at the moment, and it's probably going to get even better going forward. Thank you. Oh, questions? Do we have any questions?
Can you explain about your noise study
Do which?
about your noise study?
Yeah. So we have requirements to monitor noise around our sites. There's sort of EPA requirements, and you just want to make sure you're not upsetting the neighbours. And so traditionally how we've done that is had some poor person, it's usually at night where the issue is, so you're working at night doing noisy stuff, and you have to get some poor person to stand near the receiver with a sensor and see that we're not being too loud. So we're exploring different devices to do that remotely, just so you set a device there and then trigger alerts back through the system if there's any exceedances. And it's quite a complex equation that the EPA use, so that's going to get built into the system. So it's triggered if there's an issue. Yeah.
Pretty impressive, thank you so much. But in terms of technically, actually, in terms of culturally, how you brought over the entire team to use these very informative dashboards and visualization to use and make decision based on?
Yeah. Do you want to?
We, like at Aviation Road, we learnt a lot, learnt how to not engage the team.
Yeah.
So with Cherry Street in particular, we actually got them on board really early. We introduced them to what Connected Sites was, the whole point of it, well before we'd even sort of started to think about what use cases were available on Cherry Street. So all the use cases that we've developed or in the process of developing for Cherry Street have been completely devoted based on what they have told us they want to see. So basically, we've closed the loop by giving them what they want and what they've asked for, rather than saying, here's something cool, go and use it. So.
And probably the other thing there too is, like, how do we stop people doing what they're doing at the moment and just using the new system? So that's going to be a real challenge. Like, this is the hardest part of all this, really, is getting people using it. So that's going to be a real focus for us as we roll out this next phase, is like, all right, why are you still using that spreadsheet? And then tweaking our system so they no longer have to use those spreadsheets.